Hello and welcome to episode number 46 of the Hobbies and Happiness podcast, where we talk all about the hobby that makes us happy, tabletop gaming. I'm one of your hosts, Dan.
And I'm Jim, and today we're talking about why net decking is the correct play.
Alrighty then. So, today we're talking all about net decking.
Alrighty then.
Jim Carrey's been in the news actually recently too. Yeah. So net decking is what we're talking about today. So we kind of started this conversation a couple episodes ago when we talked about Marvel Champions. So, in that episode, I even said, I'm like, net decking is going to be an episode unto its own. And so we're finally talking about it today. But before we get into it, hey, thanks for listening. We appreciate you. We've been doing the podcast around about a year now. So, yay. Woo. Happy birthday. So feels good. Feels great to be doing this. So I'm enjoying podcasts. I'm enjoying doing it. I'm hoping you guys are enjoying listening to it. You having fun, Jim?
Yeah. At first, I was like, I don't really understand these because I never listened to podcasts.
Yeah.
And then it's like, all right, yeah, this is enjoyable.
Yeah. So
just get to talk about a random thing.
Yeah. So thank you for listening. We really appreciate it. And honestly, we couldn't do it without you, the listeners. So thank you for that. And if you are listening to us on any podcasting platform, if you could do us a huge favor, give us a 5-star rating and leave us a review. We greatly appreciate that. That way we can reach more people with this content. And you know what? If you know another card gamer or another tabletop game player, share the podcast with them. Get them in on what you are enjoying listening to. So with that, we're going to jump right into today's topic, net decking. So net decking, if you're a card game player, I feel like for me, since I've been playing card games, the term net decking has always kind of been a pariah almost. And unnecessarily. And I felt like this. I've always felt like this. I've always felt it's unnecessarily a pariah. And it's a negative thing within certain parts of the card game community. And we're going to get into it now. So like I said, we did touch on this when we were talking about Marvel Champions. Yep. But it definitely should be noted that Marvel Champions is a co-op. It's a co-op game. So when we talk net decking, we can talk about it in the co-op game sense, like you talk LCGs, but they're really different conversations, right? When you talk a co-op format or genre versus a competitive one. They're very different concepts, and we'll kind of get into it here. We're mostly going to be talking about this topic from the standpoint of a competitive environment. But there are definitely still applications and even some of the points that we're going to make for the co-op and LCG or expandable game formats. So I wanted to mention that. So first off, what we need to do is we need to define our terms. So what is net decking? Jim, what's net decking?
Yeah, it's been a term now for years. 20 years, yeah, probably.
For a while.
And it's when you're pretty much going online and searching for a deck list to play.
And we were talking about this before. We were trying to nail down when the term was coined.
Yeah, I have no idea.
And we're going to get into the history here, but we don't really know. We don't know when it was termed or who it was coined by. Yeah. If you have any of that information, definitely share it with us because I'm very interested to know. So Jim hit the nail on the head. If you look up any definitions, what you're going to find is anything that essentially says it's generally defined as the practice of copying another player's deck card for card. Yep. So again, any card game, you're going to have net decking, right? So there's a multitude of articles that I've found on the topic, and honestly, if you do any search for net decking, you will find so many different articles, some good, some bad, and then everything in between, right? So there's one paragraph that I found that I wanted to share with you. This comes from .esports.com. They were talking. This was written in 2014, and the application in that article was for Hearthstone. Yep. All right. So what they say here is they say the term netdecking was popularized sometime after it was common practice to post tournament-winning deck lists on the internet, thus enabling a player to copy a deck from the net. The term is often used in a derogatory manner to imply a lack of creativity or innovation. Many of you are likely unfamiliar with the stigmas of netdecking, but for those who've been embroiled in the debate before, let's get one thing straight. Netdecking is a good thing. So I use that paragraph because I agree with that last statement. Yeah. Netdecking is a good thing. And I'm also interested too, and we're going to get into, again, the history and how it relates to Magic being legitimately the earliest competitive card game, trading card game, okay? But this article was written in reference to Hearthstone, which, again, owes basically its successes to Magic, right? And so I learned something new in looking and doing research for this, and I'm super glad I did. But talking about relating netdecking to Hearthstone and then finding out what happened with Magic, it's insane. Because, like they say, the term netdecking was popularized sometimes after it was common practice to post tournament-winning deck lists on the internet. Was it, though? Like, honestly, was it? Because when this article was written, that practice was commonplace 10 years ago. Yeah. 10 years before that article was written, it was commonplace to post the deck lists on the internet. So, and that in that time period, those 10 years prior, I mean, they weren't using, I don't think they were using the term netdecking. They were using a different term. So that's,
I mean, if we're talking like,
so, but what I'm saying is, I think whoever wrote this article pulled that out of thin air because they didn't reference anything.
Yeah,
they made an assumption, which, I mean, you're gonna make when doing this type of content, you're gonna make some assumptions if you can't find any hard evidence to support your claim one way or another. And I think that's what happened here. Because he didn't have any hard evidence of when, because again, like we were saying, we couldn't find.
Yeah, I mean, it's nearly impossible.
Right. Well, I wouldn't say it's impossible.
I'm more so saying to find out, like, when was the first day anyone ever used the term netdecking?
Well, so typically when it comes to terms like this, for instance, you know, a lot of the times they're generally credited to someone. Like, there's someone in a relative prominence within said community used the term enough and really started making that term popular within that community, right? So I am guessing that's what happened here. I have no clue because, again, like we said, we don't know.
Yeah. I mean, and with this being in 2014, I knew netdecking was a thing back in 2007, so 7 years prior.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. That's what I'm saying is, I mean, the statement of the term was popularized sometime after it was common practice. I mean, that can mean any number of things, right? Sometime after, that could be 20 years after, you know? So it's extremely broad. But I only say that just to chuckle a little bit, because to me, I'm like, oh, you mean, in other words, you have no clue. Like, and that's fine. Like, that's okay.
Sometime around 98 to 2000, before 2014.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, for me, it's like, I'm just very interested in anything and everything. And so for this, I'd be very interested to know, when did that term really rise in prominence, and like, when did we start using the term? That's what I want to know.
There is actually I think it's a database on Google where you can track, like, put in a keyword and it'll tell you, like, at years of when something really started. Why didn't I look into that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh man, all right, soon.
Well, yeah, we'll have to find that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, because like it goes into archives of basically the internet, right? And then we'll have to look into that. That's interesting. Yeah. So okay, so for me, what I have written down here is really popularized when Hearthstone got huge. That's for me, right? Because that's 100% a personal anecdote. Because for me, when I started getting into card gaming was when Hearthstone was relatively big and popular. I mean, it's still popular, and it's still big. But when that was the first card game that I got into. Quasi competitively. Like I wanted to do better and learn the game. So I was doing, what you do when you're trying to get better at something. You research and you net deck and all of those things. I remember finding all of these sites. There were so many different sites that you could go to find deck lists, to find strategy content, to find articles. I mean, I remember when I came across, it all makes sense to me now because I've been in the community for a long time and I know what I'm looking at. Like archetypes. I saw this one thing that said Zoolock. I'm like, what the heck is that? Because I'm trying to find like what are these different archetypes? Like I didn't even know what the term archetypes meant at the time, and these different strategies, and like it's different from game to game, right? But the core strategies are very closely related from game to game. Control, aggression, mid-range,
tempo,
yes,
aggro, whatever.
So they're when you go back to the fundamentals, they're all essentially the same thing. But how they get applied in each game is very different.
Yeah.
So when I saw Zoolock, I'm like, what in the world? What the heck is that? Well, it's simple. Zoo meant it's creature based and all creatures, and then lock was the warlock was the character that you're playing. So I'm like, oh, when I figured that, I'm like, oh, okay, this makes sense. and then when I started seeing the names of the decks and the strategy and the archetypes, I'm like, oh, you just pick like two of the most popular cards within the deck, and then you just smash them together. Boom, there's your deck name. Essentially, is how it worked. And it's essentially kind of still how it works, essentially.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
Amulet Titan. I mean, Primal, goodness gracious. Primeval Titan.
Yeah.
And then Amulet of Vigor. There we go. Yeah. Goodness gracious.
Burn.
Well, yeah, but burn is one of those like that's like a universal fundamental. You're just trying to deal direct damage to your opponent.
It used to not be called burn, I found out.
Really?
Yeah. They were just calling it like red beats, and then it turned into red deck wins.
Yes.
Because it was a lot more creature based.
Yeah.
And then they started throwing in the direct damage spells as well. And then it just turned into burn.
Which now if you say burn, it essentially means direct damage to your opponent. Yeah. And a lot of those, again, like in Magic, a lot of those spells are like Fireball, Firebolt, Thunderbolt, whatever, Thunderstrike. There's so many different ones, but it's dealing direct damage to your opponent, and that's what burn is. Creature-based aggression is a different thing altogether.
Yep.
Now. So
now it's called prowess.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Okay. So before we move on, I do also want to mention one other thing here. So in that Marvel Champions episode, when we started talking about net decking, I conflated net decking with pre-constructed deck lists. Yeah. Okay. Now at the time in that episode, the application made sense. It made sense for the application, okay? But there is a distinct difference between net decking and taking a pre-constructed list, okay? Now, they're very similar, right? They're very similar from the standpoint of you have a list, you have an existing idea. Somebody has come up with this idea already, okay, for one way or another, and then you are just putting it together card for card, okay? So this is me saying, like, I can see the argument for them being the same thing, being net decking and pre-constructed lists. Now, for our purposes for this episode, and honestly, in general, they're very different. They're very separate things. But again, I can see where, again, like in that episode where I was conflating the two and talking as if they were the same thing.
Yeah.
Because they are from the same point of, like I said, you've got that idea. Someone's coming up with that idea, and you are just essentially copying it and putting it together for yourself. The other thing is pre-constructed lists. Generally, again, since we're talking about a competitive environment here, you never take pre-constructed lists into a competitive environment. You don't. So from that aspect, very, very, very different things. What do you think, Jim? I want to know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, like, even when we were talking about it before, I'm like, pre-con decks isn't really net decking, was my whole view on it. I'm like, I understand what you're saying, but again, net decking tends to be more competitive thing.
Right.
And so there's another card game called Vanguard, Card Fight Vanguard. They released a legendary deck, right? That was just purely a pre-con list, right?
Okay. All right.
There were people that took 2 of these, mashed together a deck, and were like top 8ing tournaments. It was ridiculously strong. And
That's funny.
people were destroying people with essentially a pre-con list and just, very limited cards. They were like, all right, well, these cards are bad, and I want to finish the play set of this one card.
Right.
So then, like, you took out the bad cards, put in the good cards from the other list.
The other list, yeah.
Or from, the other starter deck.
set,
Because
right.
they only give you, like, 2 of each card.
Right,
So that's why they picked up 2 and then essentially put them together.
Yeah.
And was just destroying tournaments with these.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
That-
But other than that, I can't think of another pre-con list that was, like, really good.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny.
I guess maybe some Pokemon decks. Pokemon deck ones right now are really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because they come out with a lot. They come out with a lot of pre-cons. And it's very interesting. Like, we talk Pokemon. In Pokemon TCG Online, they have a format that is theme decks.
Yeah.
So it's essentially all pre-con lists, pre-con decks are being pit against each other.
Yeah. You don't
So-
get to change them up at all.
Yeah. So, like, that's cool. Like, the fact that a game has that format available for you to play, super sick, super sweet. That really gets you into the game.
Yeah.
Very, very
sure.
easily. Now, real quick, so you mentioned top 8. I don't know if you know this, but where did it come from where top 8ing, being in the top 8 of a tournament was like, that was a sign that you were like a really good, I don't know if it was a sign you're a really good player, but like, where did the prestige come from being in the top 8?
I think that's when a lot of places you start to get prizing. So yeah.
Okay.
It also tends to be like top 16 as well. Top 16, top 8. So
Okay.
yeah, pretty
Like,
much just for prizing.
For me, because I come from, like, my background is more from like sports. Like, when I was younger, I played a lot of sports.
Yeah.
And like, I play a lot of basketball. So like, the tournament, the Final Four, like the Elite Eight, okay, you made the Elite Eight.
Yeah.
Like, nobody really cared. But once you hit the Final Four, that was that was a big deal.
Yeah.
Nobody cared about the 8. It was that 4. So when
You also probably weren't playing tournaments with like 600.
no,
teams.
correct.
But yeah,
You're
I
right.
get you.
You're right. You're right. But that's like, I didn't know. Like, I didn't know, like, if there was a history there, or if it was just once you made top 8, that's when you really got to see prizes.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. So with the what is net decking out of the way, we want to start getting into why we think it's a good thing. We've got like 4 different points here that we want to touch on. Okay. So the first being, it helps and lets players learn the game better, introducing them to a wider range of the card pool. Now, this is more along the lines of the pre-constructed lists. And with a lot of the pre-con lists for any of the games, like, it's a separate product that you buy, right? So you go out, you buy a box, and then you're ready to, like, if Jim and I wanted to learn Digimon or whatever, which, speaking of, that game looks super sick.
It seems like we're going to be learning that game.
Yeah,
soon.
we are. But if we wanted to play that, super simple. We can just go out, buy some starter decks, and then sit down and learn it together and play.
Yep.
So like it's a really easy way to get you into a game. So if once you get to the point of you're like, all right, I picked up this starter deck, I'm super comfortable with how to play the game. Right, I've got all the basics down. In fact, I've now learned all the advanced strategies of what to do inside of this game. Now I want to actually go to my LGS or a local tournament or whatever, and then actually try and compete. Once you get there, you're like, okay, most likely, like if you're a relatively new player, you're probably not going to try and build your own deck on the first go around. Depending on the player you are, you might. But like for me, when I first got into Magic, I mean, I watched countless number of YouTube videos to try and figure out how to play this game.
Yep.
Right. And then once I finally got the gumption, I found, I looked up a cheap Goblins deck. Right? Bought the singles, put it together, and then I took it to my LGS, and then I started playing. So, like step one, a lot of the times is going to be that pre-constructed list. And so, and that was like for me, when I went to the LGS, I said, hey, I want to play Magic. I've heard that they have these free starter decks. And they had free decks that they just handed out. I don't know if Wizards still does that anymore.
Welcome decks, I believe they do.
Yeah. So the welcome decks, if they're still a thing, that's awesome.
Real quick before we continue forward, I just wanted to say, so when I got into Magic, right? This was right at the start of Kaladesh. My first deck I ever built. It was mono green, Dan.
What?
Yeah. I don't think anyone knows that.
No.
Me and my sister.
No.
Yeah, so when I first got into it, I was watching I think his name SB Strictly Better MTG.
Dude. Dev. If you're not watching this, but whatever, that's okay. That was your first deck. One of his decks was my first deck too. SBMTG, Strictly Better Magic the Gathering. Yes,
he had a mono green werewolves deck, and I built mono green werewolves.
So you
had no clue how to play it at
all. so dude, this is hilarious. Jim built mono green werewolves, and I built mono green goblins, all based on mono red goblins, all based off of Dev. That's awesome. Dev is awesome, dude. Dev makes great content. Dev, you the man.
Then I later on gave that deck to my sister. I hated it, and I'm like, that's not for me. Let's learn how to go face. You know,
that's funny. That's hilarious. That's crazy, dude.
I was a filthy mono green player for a little bit.
Welcome to the dark side. And then he realized, like, dark side's not for me.
I left that. I left that dark side and went to the actual dark side of Grixis.
Of Grixis, yeah. That's funny. Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
But like, so that's funny because we both had very similar starts to Magic, where
and that counted as netdecking.
Yes, exactly. Straight up, we both did. We both net decked.
Yep.
And now we're here.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't a competitive list. But it was a budget list.
Yeah, same. Mine was a budget list as well because I'm like, I'm not looking to spend a ton of money. I mean, I think I spent like $20 on it, maybe. I think for me, the most expensive card in that list was Goblin Chain Whirler.
Ooh, yeah, I could see that. Wasn't it like $5 to $8 per copy?
I honestly can't remember. It was a while ago. It was a while ago.
And then after I got rid of that mono green list, my friend hooked me up with Boros aggro with Smuggler's Copter.
Yeah,
went face and did really well.
Yeah, because that was the deck that like was winning tournaments, all the competitive tournaments at the time. Yeah, it did. Yeah, it did. All right, so Jim, what's the next point we've got?
What's the next one? Find new and existing card synergies, which is my biggest love about netdecking. It really teaches you about new cards that you just don't know about.
And like more than teach it too, like a lot of the times, like if you're netdecking, right, you're coming and net decking, like the best thing about it is when not just when you come across a list, like you see a tournament and you see the deck list. Okay, great. That's not what I like to do, because yes, that is data. That's information. That is data for me as a competitive player trying to find out what's the meta look like, and then what deck can I bring to best challenge that meta game. Okay, that's just data. But really good net decking is when you find a deck and somebody wrote an article about it. Wrote, here is this deck, here's the overall strategy, and here's why I like to play. And then they've just written so much information about the deck.
Yep. Marvel Champions database.
Yes, that's one of the, I love
amazing.
that. I love it when people, and so the thing about Marvel Champions, like it's a co-op game, right? But we're telling our own stories inside the Marvel universe. Yeah. We're taking on these characters and, again, playing as them essentially, and we're telling our own stories the way we want to tell them. And people really take that to the deck building. So they, and some of them are really great. Some of them are straight to the point. Which, like, that's fine too. Like that, again, you're helping me as a player learn how to play your idea, essentially, right? But sometimes it's like they will take it to the next level. And they will tell legit great stories just in the write-up for the deck. Right?
A support list I came across, wow, that one went into a lot of detail.
Yeah. The one that I came across for Black Widow, like Black Widow playing poker, or Natasha Romanoff playing poker or something. It's like it's what I like to do when I'm playing these games. So, like, sharing that with other members of the community is great too. Like being able to share that is what's great. So let's see. One of the other things too is I also do feel like you tend to see a lot of these in a lot of these pre-constructed lists, because a lot of them, the way that they're designed around one or two cards. Is they're like a lot of these commander products, at least in the past, is they take a theme, right? Yeah. And they build straight up around that one theme, and every card in that list supports that theme in one way or another.
Yeah.
That really helps. It really helps the players see how this strategy or archetype can really be built around, and then you take that idea and then you just go ham with it. And that's what a lot of people do, and that's why you see people like the Command Zone and all these other outlets where they take the existing list and they show, here's how you can upgrade it and make it that much better.
Even on EDH Rec, which is one of the best websites if you play Commander format.
Yep.
And they even have a section on there for pre-con upgrades.
Oh yeah, they do.
So it's an amazing website.
Anytime I'm building a commander deck, that's the first place I go.
Yeah,
If you guys
have an interest but don't play Commander yet, go check out that website.
Yeah, just go check it out, because what you can do is you can pull up a card, and then it'll show you, like, if it's a legendary commander or a legendary card, legendary creature. Okay, it'll show you cards that are in a lot of these decks that have, this card as the commander, and then it also shows you like decks that are it's in the 99 of, for instance. So there's it's again, it's data, right? And again, for these types of games, these card games, data is a humongous part of it. Huge. Yeah. It is absolutely huge. Yeah, so you're gonna find those build arounds essentially in those pre-con lists. But again, and that's why a lot of people build these decks, right? Too, is they see like today, for instance, I was watching one of Seth's I think it was a Budget Magic video. He was building around. It was a Gruul counters list. It's Gruul modified. Oh, okay. So it was built around rejuvenating springs, I think. Yeah. And it's again taking
there's not that many counter spells in Gruul, Dad.
Yeah, +1/+1 counters.
Right.
Because in Kamigawa, it's all about the modified, making things modified. So like he'll take one or two cards and then just build decks completely around them. And like that's how you build decks, honestly.
Yeah.
Is you take one or two cards and you're like, all right, here's this synergy that I want to build around. And then you do research and then you look at all the cards in the card pool and then you go from there.
Or you have a win con. Not
Yeah.
so much even just like cards synergizing well with each other. Or it's the ultimate synergy to where it's like, all right, well, now I just win the game if I'm able to get off this combo.
So for me, when I build
that
decks,
one card.
when I typically build decks, I will take a couple of cards that I want to just try to make work or synergize well together, and then build around those specifically. Do you do it that way, or do you like to just have an idea and then find cards that fit your idea?
Well, if we've looked at my past decks, I really just play good stuff. That's it.
Well, yeah, true. But I mean,
but like that's all that's in my mind when I'm first building a deck.
well,
It's
same,
like,
yeah.
oh, this is a great card in these colors. This
Yeah.
is also a really good card in these colors. Why don't I play Sultai?
I don't know. Seriously, why don't you play Sultai?
The more I've like been thinking about it recently, I'm like, I don't know if I do like Grixis in Commander. I'm like, now I kind of like how Mardu plays
Yeah,
a bit
Mardu's
more.
good.
And I'm
Mardu's
just
good.
like, man, I don't know.
I
don't know. I just throw cards together, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't really think about it.
But that's the other thing though is like if you do it long enough and like
Yeah.
if you're doing it a lot, then that's when you're gonna be like, okay, I need to do something different, or you've got other ideas, themes, strategies, synergies, whatever. You're gonna come at it a different way.
I guess my mono blue list has a theme. So
And what is that theme?
counter. I'm playing mono blue counters,
I
just like
know.
that Gruul guy, man.
Yeah.
I'm playing counter spells. He's playing counters.
counter. All right. So the next point we have here is it helps lets players learn the competitive metagame.
Yeah.
This is huge. I mean, this is really how netdecking first came. Well, no, it is straight up how it came out. It's how it came to prominence, and really why it was used in the first place.
Posting tournament winning decks.
Yep. So before I start talking about it, Jim, tell the people what you sent me. Oh man.
Oh, on Discord?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
There was one specific guy, just a random nobody by the name of Brian Kibler.
If you're in Magic, you know who we're talking about.
Or if you're in Hearthstone, you know. who
oh,
we're talking
yes,
about.
that's true. That's true. That's true.
And he posted back in 2016, I believe it was, a post about the history of netdecking. And it was from a group of people that were called the Dojo or Magic Dojo. And they were just posting online. I believe it was between 96 and 2001 was when they were a thing.
I thought it was 94. Was it 96? Let me see.
I don't know.
Because I'm gonna pull up the Wikipedia
Okay.
on it right now.
Yeah, I forget the exact year. It could be 94.
95.
95? Okay, makes sense. Windows 95 is what they were running on.
Yeah.
And they had a website where they were posting tournament winning deck list. So
Not just that though, too.
yeah. And other articles and stuff as well. And they were pretty much the forerunners of starting off the whole term of netdecking.
So I will make sure. So I'm going to make sure I post this article. It's not really an article. It's essentially what it is a bunch of old school Magic guys coming together and talking about the old days. Essentially was what it was. And so what the dojo was, it started off as these Usenet forums. If you know anything about the history of the internet, you'll know what I'm talking about when I say Usenet forums. You young guys, you've probably have no idea. So like before the .com bubble, essentially, before the internet really took off. I mean, this is Web 1.0 stuff. This is all Web 1.0, where there was no real World Wide Web. It was just you logging on and posting to a bunch of these forums. I mean, I remember when I was younger. I mean, in the days of dial-up, my Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo days. For me, it was like all Sega Genesis. Like, I would look up all the strategy guides. I remember going to these forums. I mean, I remember the old school days of IGN. It was just all it was forums, and I remember printing off some of these strategy guides for the game that like Siphon Filter.
Yeah.
I mean, that's PS1. So again, that's still later on too. Printing off those strategy guides. I mean, it was pages upon pages and pages. I was playing fighting games like Mortal Kombat, and you're like, all right, what's the combo for the thing? Yeah, it was
back forward.
Yes, correct. So this is during those days, right? The article or the I'm just going to say article, like the article, it was super fascinating listening to all these guys talk about what it was and now what it's evolved to. One of the things that I found interesting was I think Kai Buddy's, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. I think it's Buddy or Bud. I'm not totally sure. But one thing he had said was he remembers when he would consume 100% of the Magic content. You were able to do that back then. Now he was like, you'd be lucky if you consumed 1% of the Magic content that is out there now.
There's so much.
It's crazy. So like, if you can remember a time where you were able to consume 100% of the information, that's crazy. But learning about the history of this thing was so fascinating. I mean, essentially what it was is old school Magic pros coming together and sharing their notes, essentially. They had, let's see, I'm going to see if I can find it. But they had an actual thing on there called Decks to Beat. That's what it was. Decks to Beat. Basically saying, here is what the competitive metagame looks right now. And this was before the term metagame, right? Like, honestly, if I guess, they probably came up with that term. Like, that would be my guess.
Probably.
So, like, if you were on the dojo, you already had a leg up on the competition because you probably knew what they were coming to. Nowadays, it's hard for players nowadays to think about it because everybody has the same access to all this information and everybody is looking at all this information in their data, right? But back then, not everybody had access to the internet.
Yeah.
So not everybody knew what the decks were at the time.
I didn't really know what the internet was until like 2003. So that's when we
I can't
got
even remember, to be honest.
Only reason I remember is because that's when my ma was dating her now husband when they first got together.
Yeah.
02, 03. So, and he was the one who introduced us to the internet.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. That's the only reason I know.
Yeah. So if you're at all fascinated with the history of Magic, honestly, like with professional Magic and then just stuff like this, we'll make sure we post that in the comment down below in the descriptions and the show notes. But definitely check it out. It is super fascinating. Just listening to people like Brian Kibler, LSV, Michael Flores, all these people talk about what it was back then is super interesting and fascinating. So definitely check it out. But like learning the competitive metagame is huge, right? And I've got here like just about every card game now, or just about every card game ever has at least one site dedicated to where you can find the latest tournament results and the decks that were used in that tournament. And that's what the dojo was. Yeah. It's what the dojo was. And players use that information to try and win the next big event. And like now, like it saves you time. Like it does save you time Like if you don't have a lot of time to prepare, you can just be like, all right, well here's the tournament results. Here's what works, and here I know what the meta game is going to be like most likely for this tournament. And this is the deck that has performed very well against all these other decks. So I'm going to take this, put it together, boom, I'm ready to go.
Yep.
Now you're probably not adequately prepared, but you know,
There's also a meta decking idea out there. I don't really know exactly what you want to call it. But if there is a ban list that has just happened and a lot of people are now experimenting with different decks, you play burn. You play burn because it's just
safe.
Like
it's the
super
safest strategy, yeah.
And you punish people so hard if they're like taking a little too long or like really still don't know the ins and outs of the deck.
Yeah.
That's when burn really shines.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So that makes sense. So burn shines in a metagame that hasn't been figured out yet, essentially.
Yeah.
But once the meta's been figured out, that's a completely different thing.
Then burn starts to go down a little bit because now it's like, oh, well, burn's doing great. Now let's figure out our decks and how to beat burn. And then they start teching in new stuff.
With Magic Arena, that's like red deck wins.
Yeah.
Is mono red.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
You just play mono red.
Any new rotation, so new rotation hits or new set release hits, you'll probably see mono red. A lot of people playing mono red on the ladder.
Yep.
And
or if it's a mono black aggro list or a mono white or something like that.
Yeah. Any of those mono aggro lists are typically what's popular around those time periods. And then once the meta game gets figured out, then those tend to lose popularity because they just don't do as well in the meta. Honestly. So that's point number 3, learning the competitive metagame. It's probably one of the biggest points that is the pro for net decking, honestly.
Yeah.
And so the last point here, this is very interesting. Optimizing an existing list with community help. So in doing research, I found a forum. Again, we're talking about forums here. That was all about, again, talking about Magic, but was all about mono blue tempo. So the forum post was like 21 pages, right? And it basically had people working together to try and best optimize this list, the mono blue tempo list for at the time it was the standard format for Magic. So it had 21 pages of posts over the course of 3 years with folks showing the list they used and how it performed in tournaments. So it goes hand in hand with point 3, learning the competitive metagame. So it's using that concept of net decking and then just sharing that information. So exactly how the dojo was. But this is 2018 all the way through 2021. That was there. Super, super interesting. And so it's very funny. Well, not funny, but I find it very interesting. The players who are doing all this net decking, it's not like they're trying to keep this information. It's they're sharing it with the community and saying, hey, here's what worked for me. And here, again, we're sharing data, right? We're sharing all this data with each other in hopes that we can raise the competitive level of this game and then get each other better. In the process.
This actually reminds me, because you were saying it was posted somewhere and there was a lot of people talking about it. There's one other specific deck that comes to mind, and it's Hollow One.
Oh, yeah.
So back in, I forget the year, but it was Rivals of Ixalan Pro Tour.
Yeah. That
Hollow One was a thing. And that Pro Tour was a modern event.
Okay.
So the deck was just purely based upon luck. How lucky are you, essentially? And you would make it to where it was like turn 1 or turn 2, you're bringing out multiple 4/4 beaters. And this is like you could play 2
on turn 1.
Yeah. It was nuts.
How?
So and it was, I want to say it was 4 days before that Pro Tour event. People were discussing this deck, and I want to say 3 or 4 people went to the tournament with this list, and I think 1 or 2 made top 8.
Really?
Yeah, it was
Wow.
absurd.
That's crazy.
Like this deck came out of nowhere, and if like you weren't paying attention to this forum or you didn't know anyone who was paying it, you had no clue this deck even existed.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, you did what?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, we're going to play a card that makes it to where we both discard 3 cards in our hand.
Now, where did that idea come from? Were they surveying the meta at the time, the modern meta?
I'm not entirely sure about where it came from, but it was, I just know that it was people were talking on a forum about the list.
Yeah.
And they were talking about how crazy this interaction can be. There was Burning Inquiry and Faithless Looting was, which also later got banned, partially because of this deck. And
It's still banned in modern, right?
Yeah, it's still banned. It's probably never coming off the list. It enables too many crazy decks. And so the whole point of this deck was you play a card that allows you to draw a few cards, but then you have to discard either at randomly or you get to decide the cards that are picked. I believe it's Burning Inquiry. You draw a few cards, then you discard a few. And then so you made it to where Hollow One, which was a 5 mana cost, for every card you discard from your hand during that turn, you reduce his mana value, his CMC, by 2.
I was about to say it's mana value now.
So if you pitch 3 cards in a turn, you're playing him for free, and that's exactly what they were doing.
Oh, dude. Hollow One costs 2 less for each card you've cycled or discarded this turn.
Is he a 4/4 or a 5/5?
4/4.
Okay, 4/4.
So 5 costs, 4/4 for 5.
Yeah.
And he has cycling 2 on him.
Yeah. So he himself can also be tossed if you
Wow.
need that 1 extra card.
But wow, that's crazy. All it looks at is the number of cards that you discarded that turn.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's our devastation.
Yeah.
Wow, crazy.
That card was nuts. And the fact that
So man, so you're casting him for free.
Yeah.
You cast him for free. You can cast multiple.
That's what I'm saying. You can play 2 out on turn 1. Yeah.
Wow.
It was nuts.
Wow, that's crazy.
Because then you also used there was a card to where it was you pay 2 life to cycle him. I forget the card's name. So he's a black monster card, pay 2 life to cycle him, and then you discard him to draw an extra card. So you could play Faithless Looting to draw 2, discard 2, pay the 2 life to discard himself, and now Street Wraith. You've now discarded 3 cards, which now are reducing those costs in your hand down to 0.
My goodness.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's absurd.
That's crazy. Wow. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
The things that you learn.
Yeah. 4 days before an event, and you're taking top 8 seeding.
But like this is the same thing like with teams. This is what teams do.
Yeah.
It's just you're doing all of the things that we talked about. You're doing it in a group setting essentially, and then you're sharing all that data with your team in hopes that one of you within the team does well.
Yeah.
And honestly, like this is the stuff that card gamers live for. This is the stuff that. It's why you're a card game player. Like you do net decking because it's not that it's a thing to do, but if you want to be good, this is what you're doing. It's research.
Yeah.
Like you do your research.
You're just learning from the people that have come before you.
Yes.
Which you do in literally everything else.
Every single thing else.
Mathematics, science.
That's what all of science is hey, I did this thing and here's what happened. Don't do the same thing that I did and mess up. Like that's what happens in literally all of life.
Same thing with music, everything.
But somehow doing it with card games is bad. So now we're getting into the topic of why net decking can be bad. Okay, there are a couple of legitimate. I think there's a couple, maybe one downside. One, I think. Okay, first of all, I want to net decking. Net decking has had, and we've said this before, and I think it still has. I don't think that. Let me finish this first. Still has a negative stereotype, mostly because people say a couple things. Number one, you're a cheater. No, that's bullcrap. That is absolute bullcrap. No, zero merit. If you say you're a cheater because you net deck, Dude, no.
Oh man,
No.
you're a cheater.
No. I've legit heard that. I've legit heard people say that. Like,
Wow.
you're
What are you talking about?
seriously. What are you talking
This
about?
next one, yeah, I can see this one.
So the next one is they say you have no creativity. That makes sense.
Yeah, which could very well be true.
But again, now, so I think there's some merit. So what I have written down here, just based on the standpoint of you, and you're not actively creating a new idea, you are taking an already existing idea and then maybe potentially modifying it. So okay, you're saying you're not creative because you're not coming with a new idea. Okay, all right, you have a point, but what is the point? What is the point? Why are you playing this game? Why, like, are you playing it in terms of you want to have a new idea, you want to come up with a new idea? But if you're playing to win, like if you're playing in a competitive setting,
Yep.
then you don't care about creativity for the application. Like for the application, we're not playing this game. We're not trying to build this deck to be creative. Okay. That's one of the great things about Magic and card games in general. Excuse me. Is there's so many different ways to play it and so many reasons for you to play it. Okay. Like if you're playing casual format, hey, and like when I play Magic or if I'm playing Arena when I was doing my other channel, I'd just be like, I've got a crazy idea. I want to try and build a deck around this idea and see if it works. And when it worked, it was hella fun.
I feel like you can build around any deck as long
Anything.
as it's a control deck, honestly. Like
Well,
you can
yeah.
make it work.
Well, like tribes too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
I played a rat tribal list, and I think I played it in historic. I had so much fun with that deck, and when I won, I'm like, yes, I am validated. It's a good thing. It wasn't that great, but it was fun. And honestly, that's all I was trying to do. I was trying to have fun with this idea, with this list that I built, and I won with it. So like so many different ways, but again, in a competitive application and competitive sense, you're not trying to be creative. You're trying to win money. Like if you're in a tournament, you want to win that first place prize. You want to win that 100 grand or
Especially
whatever
if
it
you're
is.
traveling to like a completely different
Yes.
space.
There was a recent Flesh and Blood tournament. I was hearing, listening to Team Coven. I was listening to Zach.
The one in Indy?
Yeah, the one in Indy.
Yeah.
I was listening to him talk about the tournament, and he had some pretty great stories about it. But it's very cool because again, like they had a team put together, and they were again trying to win. I mean, I can't remember how he did on the last day, but
we could have seen them there.
yeah, we could have, or at least Zach. But listening to him talk about it's very interesting, right? So again, like if you're competing, I'm not trying to build a new idea, right? I'm trying to win, and I'm going to take any advantage I can, not cheating. Again, cheating, dude. Okay, here's what I said to Jim beforehand, okay? The competitive, if you're competing in these card games, right? Yes, you want to win, but you also want to raise the level of the competition. You want everyone around you to get better. You want the game to get better. Magic has been around 28 years, roughly, going on 30 years. If you're playing Magic, you want that to continue. If you're playing any game on any sort of competitive level, you don't want that game to die. I've heard people talk about games that they've enjoyed and they've played competitively, and then it just died. Makes you very sad because here's a game you enjoy playing. You're good at it. You're winning tournaments, or you're doing well in the tournament. You're top 8ing these tournaments. You want that to continue. You want that experience to continue. You want others to experience what you're experiencing. You want more good players to come in so you can prove you're the best out of a very good pool of players, right? That's what real competitors do. That's what real competitors feel. I've never met, and I've been competing in a lot of different things through my entire life. I never want to play against bad players. I want to play against people who are better than me and beat them and try to beat them. And if I don't, I don't. Right? But that pushes me to then get better it improves me. And then me and my opponent are playing the dance of I'm going to beat you, you're going to beat me, and we're going to continually try and best one another. And you hear anyone talk about competition, they have rivalries. So, like some of them have rivalries, and it's back and forth. I beat him, he beat me. I did something different, then I beat him, and then he did something different. He beat me. There we go. Beat it. But that's how real competitors talk. If you talk because and all you say is I just want to win, I don't care about what happens, I want everyone else just to do very bad. That is not
Then you don't
competition.
care about the game.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
No, all you care about is carrying a stupid trophy home that's gonna say absolutely like you didn't earn it. Like it's not about that dumb trophy. It's not about the money.
Yeah.
It's not like the money. Like if you're in a competition,
Well, it
you
could
win
be
money.
about the money. Yeah.
Well, right. But like if it's just about the money, again, then like you're not in it for the game.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of times for competitors, it's not as much the game, but and Jim, you've said this a lot. It's the journey.
Yeah.
It's getting to that point.
Yeah.
If you make it about the money or the trophy, you've lost.
Not to mention, it's not even like it's a lot of money either.
No.
Okay, let's throw that out
No.
there. If it's just about the money to you for something, you're in the wrong industry, really.
Yeah.
If
True.
you're trying to just earn money from playing tournaments, then you're in the wrong industry.
Right. Especially a game where there is no competitive scene.
Yeah.
Oh wait, that's changed. Coming back
Soon.
we did we did that podcast saying is Magic dead, and now it's
I'm not saying they're listening to the podcast, but you know.
yeah, we didn't mention this for a while, but I was like,
hit me up.
yeah.
Hit me up, Wizards. We'll talk.
So yeah, I wanted to get that off because it's just stop with the negative stereotype. Just stop.
You know, I also used to think that net decking was not a good thing, so I would try to stay away from it when I was like in Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah.
Back in 2007, pretty much.
Yeah.
I would always just hear people like bashing it. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just not going to do that. And then I started just doing it. I'm like, wait, this is just making me a better player. Why am I not doing this all the time? So,
You're getting more ideas.
Yeah.
Like, yes, you're using other people's ideas, but it's not like you don't always have to have original ideas, right? And you're not stealing someone's ideas either. That's not it either. It's you're taking an existing idea. But what is music? Like you look at music, so many themes are very similar.
Yeah.
So that are similar, and there's been lawsuits that are like you. What was it? There's an Ice Ice Baby, and took
and Queen.
Queen. Do 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 do.
Under Pressure.
Under Pressure. There we go. What's his name? Vanilla Ice.
Yeah.
Was talking about that, and he was like, "No, we didn't use the same thing. We didn't use."
It's literally
he said,
the same.
"This is what he said. He said we didn't use that beat. Their beat goes do 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 do. Ours goes do 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 do." It's like you added in the one beat. The one beat, but
that's literally like the same note.
I think, and there was a lawsuit, and I think he lost that lawsuit.
Yeah, he did.
And like in that interview, you can tell he straight up acknowledges that he got that idea from Queen, right? Again, that's not a bad thing. Like there's plenty of times to where like I get you look at any of our videos, okay? I guarantee you'll be able to find other videos that look somewhat similar, right? That's not because I'm stealing something. It's I've gotten ideas from other creators.
We definitely didn't talk to anyone like that recently.
And it's not, and a lot of the times it's, you know what, this looks really good. I'm going to use that as a base and kind of put my own sort of spin on it.
Yeah.
But that's happens all the time in every art form ever. Imitation legitimately is the sincerest form of flattery. Like if you're imitating somebody, that means you have a high impression of that person.
Yeah.
Honestly. And so like with me, that's straight up how it is.
Also going back to the last thing.
Yeah.
Guys, competition breeds greatness.
Straight up.
Like they've been saying it for a long time.
You know what else? Competition breeds is creativity too.
Yeah.
It does. And that's why you see a lot of with card games particularly, you see people who approach the metagame and say, okay, how can I build a deck that beats this strategy?
Yep.
Right. So that's straight up. That's you're trying to come up with a new idea that counters the existing ideas that are already there. So one other thing too. So again, in one of these articles I found, they say netdecking also comes with its downsides. However, if the list is not accompanied by the author's notes, it may be difficult to discern what roles particular cards play in the deck, what the flex slots are, and which cards are metagame calls. That what we were saying earlier, where if you find a deck, it's always best finding it in an article and then hearing what the author of that idea, what their thoughts were when they built that idea. Essentially, Star City Games has done a phenomenal job. When they write up these lists.
Oh, yeah.
Same thing with Channel Fireball. Any of these big name sites, these strategy sites, they do such a great job, and I love reading those articles just to get the ideas. I read them and I'm like, wow, I remember reading a lot of Patrick Chapin's articles when I was first getting into the game. It's like, my goodness, he'd throw out like deck list after deck list after a deck list because he had an idea. And it's super awesome just getting into the minds of these really, really great players. So,
I was actually thinking about this the other day. I was going through some list for Burn and some other things with a friend of mine, and when I was going through it, I'm like, why aren't they playing this? And why are they playing this card? Because I've been playing Burn for a few years now,
right?
And not so much just in Magic. I've been playing Burn in Yu-Gi-Oh for a long time.
Right.
And I also play it in Pokemon too. So
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. So when I'm now looking at these Magic list of Burn, I'm like, why aren't they playing this? And I'm like, it's so good against this deck, this deck, this deck, and these are like the number 1 and number 2 decks
in the
for
format.
for the format,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And I'm like, just why are we not playing this card? Deflecting Palm.
Yeah,
Okay, tell me why they aren't playing it. And Amulet Titan's the number 1 deck.
I don't know. Did you find something that said why?
No. It was because I was playing it, and when I let I'm pretty sure I can say his name. I let Avi play it.
Maybe they're not playing white. Who knows?
They are.
Oh,
They play white.
they are playing.
They got the
white.
Boros Charm and the Lightning Helix. Oh my God. Lightning Helix.
What is on top of the deck? What is on top of the deck? Oh, it's Lightning Helix! Oh my God!
And then even white cards in the sideboard. But again, when he was telling me, is like, oh dude, Deflecting Palm was so clutch at this tournament. I'm like, I know. Play the card, guys.
I don't understand. Deflecting Palm would be so good against Amulet Titan.
It's so versatile, yeah. They're like,
I'm
I'm
gonna hit you for 8.
if they're going
no,
to try,
I'm gonna hit you for 8. Oh my goodness!
if they're gonna try and kill you like pretty much spot on with Valakut, right? You can make one of those triggers, just hit them back. And then you can then go into your turn again if there's nothing else for them to be able to kill you with,
right,
and then you can continue into your turn.
right.
But again, yeah, if they swing in with a Titan or even now to constructs that are huge, you're just like, okay, this is fine.
Yeah.
And against Burn, it's you're wasting one of their cards and dealing 3 damage to their face. Against Mono Green Tron, they throw literally anything at you.
Yeah.
The Ulamog, you're like, no, you're going to take the 10. Sure, I'm going to blow up these 2 lands that I now mill 10 cards.
Yeah.
Or 20
Mill
cards?
20.
20 cards.
20.
Sure, I'm going to get that effect, but you're eating 10 damage.
Yeah.
Guys, the card's too good, man. Come on.
Yeah, why would you not play deflecting?
I don't
palm?
know.
That doesn't make
they
sense.
haven't been running it for a while now.
Wow.
Whatever. So that's
Jim's upset.
So that's kind of where like the whole you can be creative with your list when you start to have enough experience with the deck list, right?
Yeah.
Then you can start making changes of
The
things
deck
you
list,
don't
the
like.
archetype.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was also first getting into Burn, it was 3 colors. Like they were playing it as Naya.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because
I like Naya.
I forget the card in the sideboard. It was a Gruul card that allowed you to blow up like enchantment artifacts, and then it would deal damage to them.
Okay.
So then, yeah, you would play that in the board, and then I would like play it, but I just didn't really like it. It just felt clunky playing that third extra color. Slowly removed it, and then everyone else started removing it as well and played other things to go around it. And then some lists were playing the deflecting palm. I love deflecting palm, and then it slowly rotated out of the deck list.
So Jim's talking about this from the standpoint of someone who knows this game very well.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're a new player and you come across the list and you just put it together and you start playing it, that can be to your detriment. Right. Yeah. Like this point alone could really go against the point that we made about it being a positive of you learning the game. And that could just blow up in your face. It could make it difficult for you to learn the game because you're like, you don't understand how the deck is supposed to work, how it's supposed to function, how you're supposed to pilot the deck, and you could just straight up like quit because you're not having fun and you're not understanding it.
Yeah.
Right.
Going back to my mono green werewolves,
Correct,
I had
right.
no clue what
Right.
I was doing. And I'm like,
And he
I don't
hates
wanna play
mono
this.
green.
I hate mono green. I tell Dan and like other people that came into the store, when a new player comes in and they're like, oh, I got this mono green list. I'm like, hey, I am going to wipe the floor with them. I want them to think mono green is the worst deck. I'm like, just get off of it, man. It's a noob stomper.
You're not having fun? Let me show you a good deck to play.
Like, how do I beat that card? Oh, you mean lightning bolt? How do you beat that card? You don't.
All right. So there's one thing that I think really kind of explains the whole negative stereotype of net decking in card games. It's called the IKEA effect. So if you're not familiar, which honestly
I just learned about this today.
I'm not sure how many of you are familiar. I just learned about it today as well in doing research. This is the study right here. So I printed out a couple copies. It's about a 35-page study from the Harvard Business School. It's called the IKEA effect, when labor leads to love. The main point that was found out of the study, and we'll link the study, we'll link the Wikipedia on it as well. Main point that they found says a 2011 study found that subjects were willing to pay 63% more for furniture they had assembled themselves than for equivalent pre-assembled items. What does that mean? All right. There's another paragraph in there I want to read. Because of the IKEA effect, we are often willing to fork over extra money for experiences that require us to put in more work, such as assembling furniture ourselves rather than buying it pre-assembled. Sure, these experiences can be fun in their own right, but this can still lead us to experiences. But this can still lead us to overspend. The IKEA effect can also give us a skewed picture of how good a job we did on something that we worked hard on, making us overconfident. How can that be applied to net decking? Okay, we are protective of our own ideas, and we tend to think more of them than anyone else. The deck list is the ultimate idea in card games. Your deck that you built is you embodied in a card game. And you're protective of that, right? So if you make a deck and then you post it and then you see all of these people playing your idea. Now, like if you're a good player, or if you're a very strategic player, that probably is not going to bother you because you've been in card games for a while, right? But on the aggregate, on the average, if you see someone else doing your thing, that hurts a little bit, because that's mine, right? That's my thing. But this study, I feel like, gives us a really good eye into why people think so negatively about the term, or just net decking in general. So, I mean, when I first read that stat, 63% more for furniture that I build myself. I would not do that. No, I would not do that. That's not me. Not me. Because again, I'm looking at value.
Yeah.
Like, I look at the value of something.
Yeah.
And honestly, time is also a part of it as well.
Time is money.
Right. So now you're also talking to a guy who does a lot of work himself and doesn't like hire it out. But honestly, that's because I save that money. Because a lot of the times, like when we moved in, I did all of this work myself. Yeah. I didn't hire a contractor because that's just too expensive, right? And that's not a lot. There's a lot of people that do stuff like that as well. But I think this gives us a good look. And I've got here, we as humans, we have a psychological need to feel competent. And that's a big one too. Like, it's competency, right? Like, we need to feel validated as card gamers. Like, we need to feel validated. And sometimes that also goes into why you net deck as well, because you want to find something that's done well. And so you find a deck that's won, and then you try and pilot it to try and win, right? So really good study. If you want to check it out, we'll make sure we put a link in the description where you can find it so you can check it out for yourselves. It's very interesting. It's about 30, I think it's like 35 some odd pages. So it'll take some time to get through a little bit, but very, very interesting indeed. What did you think when you saw that?
I was like, holy cow. That was my first initial thought. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. But yeah, I mean,
when I dug into it, I'm like, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, it makes sense. Like, the conclusions that they came to, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, and I like how they call it the IKEA effect too, because it makes perfect sense. So,
literally IKEA.
Yeah. All right. What do you think? What do you think of net decking? I'm very curious as to hear the audience's opinions and what you guys think of net decking. I would assume if you've been around, if you've been playing card games for an extended period of time, you have no issue with net decking. You probably do it yourselves. I feel like net decking as a negative connotation is from newer and younger players, because
they're just more casual players as well.
Yeah, true. But that's my, again, anecdotally, that's what I think. That's where I think it comes from. And honestly, if I'm honest, when I first got into card games and I heard the idea of net decking, I'm like, why'd you want to do that? But as I started getting into playing it more competitively and learning the game more, I'm like, yes, this is what I do. It's always what I do. Like, if I'm learning, if I want to get better, net deck, and then I'm like, all right, if I'm building a deck, there's a reason I'm building a deck. I have a specific reason as to why I'm building this deck.
How many times have you built a deck you came across online and you're like, I don't like this deck?
Too many.
Too many times.
Absolutely too many. In fact, the Pokemon deck I'm playing right now is a net deck. And I'm having fun with it because, it's the first time I play Pokemon in a long time. And honestly, I could not build you a standard Pokemon deck right now because I don't know the format. I don't know enough of the format, and I don't know the card pool well enough to be able to tell you what.
Not to mention, if like you're going into Pokemon and you were a Magic player, right? Your whole mindset for deck construction would be completely different than what competitive Pokemon decks are.
Absolutely.
It's nuts.
Well, it's funny.
They're like, I'm going to play 5 basic energies.
Yep.
And then in Magic, you're like, oh, I got to play like 20.
Yep.
I got to play like 25, whatever it is.
So the list that I'm playing, it has a total of about
Play like 10 draw cards as well.
Well, there's not even. I don't think there's 10 Pokemon in the list.
Yeah.
I don't think there's 10 Pokemon.
That's probably
there's 4 fusion energies, two mental. So there's 6 total energy in the deck. 6 total energy. 4 cards that you could only play in the first turn, which is a broken freaking card. I absolutely love it. Battle VIP Pass, I think is what it is. I absolutely love that card. But it's so different. It's like I go from that, then I go to Magic, then I go to Legends of Runeterra. It's like I bounce back and forth between these different card games, and it keeps me on my toes.
It was the same thing when I started playing Flesh and Blood. I'm like, what is this deck creation
Dude,
list?
I'm still super a noob to Flesh and Blood.
Yeah.
I played it a couple times with you, and I'm like, I don't even know if I'm liking this, but like I have not played it enough.
It's a really cool game.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, Avi was also telling me how their competitive scene works. So
so different.
Cards get banned based upon how
well they do.
How many tournaments showing points that they have.
They have a BNR.
Like,
They've got
holy cow!
At,
really?
At the time of when we're recording this, they have a BNR coming up. And people are speculating who's going to get banned because they just had a major event, and they look at how well these cards do, and I think the card gets like living legend status is what it is. I think so. It's very interesting.
Hall of Famer. That would be cool. Make
like it's a card, it's like they look at how a hero does, and they're like, all right, you can't play this hero anymore.
Yeah.
But again, all the heroes are like tokens essentially. I believe so. It's very, very interesting and very different. So again, for me, I want to get to where I know and can play these games well. Like I'm competent in them, right? So Flesh and Blood is on the list. Of I need to get. I am not competent at all.
Yeah, it's just like a completely different game.
Yeah,
but it's like whole mana stuff setup is like Marvel Champions.
Yeah,
because you're pitching cards from your hand.
Yeah. Which I like that mechanic. I like the multi-use cards.
And you draw up to like 5 cards every turn. It really depends on your
When
hero.
we played it that one time, that was fun.
Yeah.
I had fun. I had a lot of fun with that. It was very, very cool. So that's something to where I want to do on the channel, because we've got decks that we can just sit down and play, because again, like the new player, start with this pre-con list and then learn it and then go from there. So that's kind of what I want to do. So, what do you think about netdecking? Very interested. I want to know your guys' opinions. Let us know what you think. Are you pro netdecking? Are you on the other side? Let us know, because we're very, very interested to know. And with that, we're talking about the card of the week. Card of the week. So I'm not gonna lie to you guys. We had a tough time figuring out what the card of the week was gonna be.
I was letting Dan pick because I picked last week's.
Yeah, and I'm like, all right, well, you know what card I want to talk about? I want to talk about Muldrotha the Gravetide. So Muldrotha the Gravetide is, since we've talked a lot about Magic in this episode, I thought it'd only be fitting to talk about a Magic card. So it's Muldrotha the Gravetide. Muldrotha the Gravetide is a 6 mana value legendary creature elemental avatar, 3 black, green, blue. 6/6 says during each of your turns you may play a land and cast a permanent spell of each permanent type from your graveyard. Mythic. Muldrotha is gorgeous. I love Muldrotha. So Muldrotha was the first commander deck that I built. First commander deck that I built. I remember when I saw, because Muldrotha was in Dominaria, and that was around the time when I got into Magic, when I started playing Magic. So when I found out,
that was such a good set.
I'm looking forward to getting back to Dominaria with one of the upcoming sets. Very interested to see how that set's going to turn out. Looks really cool. But when I first found out about Commander, and then I read this card, I saw it, I'm like, I didn't really know how the graveyard worked, what it was, and what every stuff meant. And then when I found out, I'm like, wait, I can just play stuff from my graveyard? Hand? I'm like, that is just... And now that I know my play style... Muldrotha is my playstyle.
She'd be ridiculously strong even if that card got exiled when it goes back into the graveyard.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Still ridiculously strong.
So the way
they
it
don't
works,
have that.
it's crazy. It's absolutely insane. You play a card from your hand. Okay, let's say it dies and goes to your graveyard. You can then play it again. You look at the type, right? So you can play a land. You can also play a creature, an artifact, and an enchantment. Those are the only 3 permanents, correct? Artifact, creature, and enchantment.
I believe also tribal.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Not really used anymore. That's old school. I
And
believe.
more so only really matters for Bitter Blossom, which is tribal.
Oh, because that's
enchantment.
tribal enchantment.
Yeah.
That's right. That's true. Oh yeah, because you can use that as your tribal.
Yep.
That makes sense. So if you play Spore Frog, for instance, play
So many times.
so many times, I have a Spore Frog on board. I'm gonna attack into you. You know I have a Spore Frog, right? But then you can counter that effect very easily now. Damage can't be prevented. Man, there's plenty of cards like that.
Negating abilities.
Yeah.
So
But anyway, you play Spore Frog on board. Somebody goes to attack you. I'm going to sacrifice my Spore Frog to prevent all damage. Goes back to my turn. I'm going to play Spore Frog out of my graveyard, and then you just do it again and again and again and again.
Leyline of the Void.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Rest in peace.
Which Jim plays Rest in Peace in every deck that's white.
Yeah, pretty much.
Every deck that's white, he has Rest in Peace.
My
in it.
Jeskai Walls list, it doesn't even make sense for me to play it because I play a lot of flashback cards.
And
and I still play it.
And every time he plays that deck, he always has Rest in Peace like turn 2 or turn 3. I'm like,
it's
are
crazy.
you freaking kidding me?
Yeah,
I don't. Nuts. I think he fixes his opening hand.
Oh, I definitely do.
I think he has. Okay, so I have a story here. So there was a time. All right. And so if my buddy is listening, I guarantee he will. Zach, if you're listening, back me up on this. So I don't know if you remember, but when I went to my first Magic Fest, I went down to Indianapolis and stayed with a friend of mine who I hadn't seen since college. And I found out that he played Magic. It's like, oh, dude, that's awesome. So when I found out that he was in Indy in the Indianapolis area, I found out that that conference was going to be there. I'm like, oh, sweet. So I talked to him. We met up there. I stayed with him and his family for a couple of days. We hung out, and then he's got his friends who played Magic, right? So after one of the nights, we go back to his place and we spent the night playing Magic, right? There was one guy there. Okay. Every game he had Soul Ring turn 1. Every game. Turns out, yeah, he was fixing his opening hand.
Wow.
So one of the games, I think, one of the last games, I think I was playing my Amara, my Amara tokens deck. Dude, I beat that guy. Yeah. When I figured it out, I'm like, okay, I'm just swinging everything at you. Okay, yeah, you're dead. All right, see you later, buddy.
Fix your hand for the next game. All right, thanks.
But it's funny. Now we're playing a game, Ashes Reborn, where you do fix your opening hand.
Yeah.
It's very fun. It's a very different experience. Very, very cool game. But anyway, that was a story. And it was funny though. Another guy there playing Commander, he pulled out a Muldrotha list. It was the same list that I had first built because he got it off of Mitch at the Commander's quarters. It was a budget Muldrotha list. I'm like, hey, I know what deck you're playing.
Card for card.
Yeah, exactly. Card for card. And that was the first time he had played Commander.
Yeah.
So it was fun, like trying to show him how to play Muldrotha and then how to play Magic, how to play Commander as well. Yeah. So it was very cool because I'm telling him, okay, here's what you need to do. This is what this card does. This is what that card does. Sharing an experience with somebody else who's starting the same way that I did. It's very cool. And then seeing them have fun as well. So it's very... So we shared our Muldrotha Commander experience. So that was very cool. But Muldrotha, and so I ended up taking that first list that I built and then like just really turning it into like a control Muldrotha essentially.
Yeah. So we've had a lot of comments recently about people asking you, why don't you play Coma in your Muldrotha list?
Okay, when he says we've had comments, he means him. He literally asked me that before we started, and I'm like, so what I said was, it doesn't go with a theme. It doesn't go with a deck. And what did you say, Jim?
I'm like, Dan, it's literally good stuff.
Which it is.
It's value.
It is straight up value. But when the time I built the deck, Coma wasn't even a thing. Coma wasn't around. So then I built a Coma list that was completely separate. So yeah, it's for Commander. It's like I built decks around an idea and a theme, really. So I don't know. Depending on the theme, what I like, Coma would be put in as like a win con, I guess.
Yeah,
is how that would be. But that would be sick though, playing it from the graveyard.
You'd be like, I got rid of it, and you're like, did you though?
Did you though? When did you?
Did you though?
Yeah. So all right, well that's some Muldrotha of the Gravetide. Yeah, I could go on and on talking about Muldrotha. Honestly, not gonna lie, my favorite thing about Muldrotha is the artwork.
Yeah. They did a really good job.
And that's a whole other topic that we could talk about is just artwork in card games. I feel like artwork in card games it's like 50% the game, 50% the artwork. And then like where that line is like shifts. Is it sometimes it's like it's more the artwork.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And the way Magic is now is the art is overtaking the card game, but it's still an amazing card game. It's crazy. So yeah,
it's actually the reason I got into Vanguard. I was just walking by. I'm like, what are these cards? They looked amazing.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, all right, cool. And the dude sat down with me and played a game. And then I was hooked.
Dude, and that's what
no
LGSs need to do. And if you don't do it, you should.
Yeah. It wasn't even a worker.
Oh,
it was just some random dude.
Really?
Yeah.
And you know what? That's one of the great things about these LGS communities. I remember the first time was going to Grapple. I think I was looking at a game and I'm like, man, what is this? I think it was Jeremy. I think Jeremy was there, and because it was Boss Monster. I'm like, what is this game? So Jeremy was there
if it was
playing.
Boss Monster, I think it might have been Brady.
No, it wasn't.
Oh, was it?
Wait, no, it was Brady.
Okay, because Brady just talked about the game to so many people.
It was Brady. Brady was there playing a pod.
He would help me while I was working, and someone wanted to know about Boss Monsters. I'm like, I don't really know a whole lot about this, and Brady just like steps up. He's like, "This."
Let me tell you about it. It was Brady.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the times I was there, Jeremy was there. And then he was telling me about some other game. And then one of the times it was Brady, because this was the first time that I was really going into Grapple. Yeah. But yeah, I think it was Brady. He was telling me about Boss Monster. That's funny. So Brady, you the man, which he is. If you know Brady, you know him right, because Brady's awesome. So, all right. Well, all right. We've gone on for a long time, but that's okay.
That's all right.
That's all right.
Good stories, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, again, let us know what you guys think. Very interested to know. And also, do you like Muldrotha? If you play Magic, do you like Sultai?
What cards do you use to hate on Muldrotha? Let us know. Yeah. DM me, you know?
Basically any graveyard hate. Bajuka Bog, the Muldrotha player. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Just keep bouncing your Bajuka Bog.
Yep. So, all right. Well, Jim, where can people find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram at Jim Morgan, HNH. You
can find me on Twitter at _DG Campbell, Instagram at Daniel.G.Campbell. Head over to our website, www.hobbiesandhappiness.com. And you'll find all of our social links there. Yeah, well, we're going to get out of here. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Great episode. Catch you in the next one. See ya.
Take care.